look out and see this many women gathered together, it always moves me. It moves me because what I see is all this potential and possibility that's here in this room and here at Capital One. And also, you're really beautiful. You know, really, take a look. Take a look around you and see who the women are. Prophecies are a way of imagining the future. And there was one prophecy that really captured my imagination. And surprisingly, it was made by a man in the 1800s. His name was Matthew Arnold. He was a poet, and he said, "If ever the world sees a time when women will come together purely for the good of humanity, it will be a power as the world has never seen. Now is our time, and you are the women." Now, women's collective power has never been fully realized, but it is a gathering force. It is a force that is redefining leadership, redefining power, redefining success, and it's also largely invisible. It's not on the radar screen. It's what I call a revolution hidden in plain sight. So for the past 5,000 years, we have been a domination-based society, which has used power over others. And when you use power over others, what you do is you generate hierarchies, you generate frontier mentality, you revere the Lone Ranger style of leadership, you celebrate those qualities of independence, autonomy, individuality. Well, we've had some good things come out of that use of power. We've had the Industrial Revolution, technology, architecture. But if you think about the woes of the world, genocide, sexism, racism, terrorism, war, sex slave trade, environmental degradation, Wall Street debacle, what do they share in common? A use of power over others. Besides the fact that it's really destructive use of power, it's because there's always going to be a loser and a winner. It's also an unsustainable use of power. I mean, as we saw in the implosion of the Soviet Union and the explosion of Arab Spring. Another prophecy. This one was made by Bella Abzug, the late congresswoman from New York. She was known for wearing these really big hats. And she said, in the 21st century, power wasn't going to change women. Women were going to change the nature of power. And that's exactly what I encountered in researching my book, Iron Butterflies. I talked to very successful women who were using their power in a different way. They were not using their power over others. They were using their power with and for others. They were creating more collaborative and cooperative work environments that were based on mutuality and respect. And I saw them doing this. I realized that they are midwifing a new era of collaboration and cooperation. Now, many of these women were in their own sectors, and they felt that they were sort of unique in creating these kind of work environments. And I was in a privileged position to see these women across sectors. And I thought, wow, this is a movement happening. And I felt like I needed to give them a name, because in the spirit of solidarity, so that they knew that there were other women doing similar work. I call them Iron Butterflies because the title seemed to hold the paradox that these women held. They had a will of iron and the touch of a butterfly. They were determined and yet nurturing. They were strong and yet vulnerable. And like the butterfly, which is a symbol of transformation, all these women went through a personal transformation at least once. And of course, you know, if you think about the monarch who flies 2,000 miles to its destination, I mean, really, that's a stunning feat of nature. These women also persevered through difficult times. They all suffered injustices. What was brilliant about them was that they never became victims. So I ended up interviewing 60 women from 8 countries. There was Jody Williams, who was Nobel Peace Prize laureate on landmines, Barbara Kingsolver, the novelist and environmentalist, Pat Mitchell, former CEO of PBS, Christine Todd Whitman, former governor of New Jersey, judges, lawyers, doctors, nurses, teachers, educators, CEOs, entrepreneurs, managers, an artist, a dancer, a woman who owned a vineyard run by all women in Tuscany. That was a really hard assignment, I have to say. One of my more memorable moments, although all these women were memorable, I mean, meeting them was really sort of like that girlfriend feeling. Do you know when you meet someone, you go, girlfriend, you know? One of them was Violet, who is an Aboriginal elder in Australia. And I entered her beautiful garden, and she looked at me and she says, you know, you don't need to interview me. You already know what you need to know. Now, on some level, I really honored that sort of, yeah, I really do know what I need to know. But then I was also thinking, no, I just traveled 22 hours. I need to interview you. She said, instead, I will initiate you in my ways. So, I mean, I got much more than I ever dreamed of, because as she initiated me in her ways, she also told me her story, so I got my interview that way. It was a very powerful experience, very moving. I promised not to tell what it was, but there was something she did say at the end that I can share with you, which was, she said, women hold the wisdom, men hold the love. That's how it should be. Women hold the wisdom, and men hold the love. That's how it should be. Now, I don't know about your reaction to that, but it was like, my experience seems like it's the exact opposite. And it became kind of a guiding light for me. I thought, well, okay, so why do I need to uncover women's wisdom? And what has prevented men from holding love? And if you want to know the answer to that, you have to read my book. Shameless self-promotion, I have to say. Feminine skills are powerful. They're powerful because they're the skills we need to develop positive relationships in our organization, which contributes to an organization's overall robustness, adaptability, resilience, and creativity. Feminine skills are the skills we use for developing true collaborations, which is the pathway to solving the many complex issues we face. And feminine skills are the skills we use to facilitate collective intelligence. If you promote women, if you have them in executive positions, in management positions, if you have more women on your board, you consistently will do better organizationally and financially. And those companies that had more women on their board outperformed the companies on the average by an 84% return on sales, a 60% return on investment capital, and a 46% return on equity. I mean, those are big numbers. So Jeffrey Pfeffer, who is a professor at Stanford University, I like the way he phrased it. He calls it the knowing-doing gap. And he said, oh, yes, we know that it's really smart to have women in positions of power. Yes, yes, yes. But we don't do anything about it. And I'm hoping that's going to be changing. We have to close that gap. So gender schemas are cultural assumptions that we hold about men and women that are unconscious. Now, one of these cultural assumptions we hold is that we first assume women are incompetent until proven otherwise. And it's the opposite for men. So right from the get-go, a woman is not perceived as a leader. I mean, I think it's beginning to shift a little, but it's unconscious, that's the thing. So right from the get-go, you're not perceived as a leader. And if you feel like you've been held to a higher standard, well, guess what? It's not your imagination. You have been. So if a woman is successful, it's because she's a hard worker. I love that one. Or because she's lucky. If she fails, it's because she's incompetent. If a man succeeds, it's because he's competent. If he fails, it's because he's had bad luck. Now, there was a study done called the Goldberg Paradigm, which was a global study all over the world. And what they did was they had a paper that what they said was written by, well, they had a speech. And in one situation, they attributed the speech to a man. And in another situation, they attributed to a woman. Exactly the same words. Consistently all over the world between men and women. If they thought it was a man, they gave it more credence and authority and credibility than they thought if it was a woman. Exactly the same words. That's the assumption coming forward. Now, how many of you have experienced this dynamic? Will you raise your hand? Will you look around, please, everybody? Keep your hands up. I want you just to know that you're not alone, because I can't tell you how many times, how many women have experienced this, and also how insidious it is for undermining women's self-confidence when you don't feel like you're being mirrored or validated. But the interesting thing about that story as well is, where are the women? So she told me that, oh, this woman came afterwards at the water cooler and said, oh, I love your idea. I think it's so great. Well, why don't you speak up in the meeting? Speak up. It doesn't help her if you're at the water cooler. Stand with her there in the meeting, and then next time she'll stand with you. I know that some younger women say they've never experienced this gender schema, and my response to that is, I hope you never do, because I think at the entry level, it's pretty level playing field, but I think the likelihood of coming up against it, as the higher you climb, the more likely you'll encounter it. My message to you is this: know that feminine skills are powerful. Embrace those feminine skills because they can make strong connections in organizations that contribute to the robustness and resilience and creativity of an organization, that they are the skills we use for developing true collaborations which will address our complex issues, and they are the skills that we use for facilitating collective intelligence. Be clear about what you have to offer and value it. Take a look at what those skills are. If you are someone who loves to bring people together like a connector, or if you're really great at bringing difficult people along and being a bridge builder, or if you're someone who is a great collaborator, know that these are very powerful ways of working and being, and put value on them, and know that these can give you an edge as a leader.
As we're looking to find our own voices and trying to reach into the other half, so reaching back out to the male-dominated or the male-led group, I noticed that I think there's one man in this room with us. Thanks for coming. And not to put any individual or gender on the spot, but to ask, how do we reach that audience, and what language do we use to promote our strengths in that masculine field? How do we reach out and not sound, as Megan was saying, like we're being passive aggressive, but how do we make sure that we use language to validate that this is a strength and not just the old feminist drum we're beating?
Are you asking him? Well, first of all, there's a lot of men out there who feel the same way. I mean, I've been talking to men who, CEOs who actually are trying to create more collaborative work environments, and they're getting a lot of grief. They're saying, hey, that you don't look strong when you're inviting everybody and sharing the power, So they're struggling with it too, and that's the next step, I think, is finding that coalition between men and women.
Well, thank you for coming and giving such an inspiring time with us. I think we all feel different and better and are sitting taller.